Gun rights in America are under fire. It's your right to bear arms in the United States. It's written in the Constitution. But there are many who would love to see guns locked up forever. Hi, I'm Glenn Reynolds. Today we're going to talk about gun rights and also let you know about a fun event blasting off in Texas this December. The event, called Bullets Bourbon, is a weekend-long retreat in support of the Second Amendment. More on that coming up. But first, let's meet today's panelists. Joining us from Monument, Colorado is PJ Media contributor and co-host of Trifecta right here on PJTV, Stephen Green, the vodka pundit himself. And standing by in Las Vegas is Kevin Williamson. He's an author and correspondent for the National Review. Welcome, guys, and thanks for joining us.
Hey. Thanks.
So it's no secret that the media and President Obama have set their sights on gun control. President Obama has said, and I quote, "At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of violence doesn't happen in other advanced countries." Yeah, sure it doesn't. It doesn't happen with this sort of frequency. He also said, quote, "As a country, we have been through this too many times, whether it's an elementary school in Newtown or a shopping mall in Oregon or a temple in Wisconsin or a movie theater in Aurora or a street corner in Chicago. These neighborhoods are our neighborhoods and these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics." So panel, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we all probably agree that stricter laws won't reduce gun violence. So how should we go about curbing the kinds of mass shootings we've seen in recent years, like Sandy Hook or Aurora? Steve, let's start with you.
Yeah, these mass shootings, they're such a horrible topic, and the left can really own it. They can really play it up, or even sort of Republicans like Chris Christie. But the Columbine shooting, that was over 15 years ago now, just about 35 minutes away from where I am. And my first thought after I'd had a chance to calm down and think about it was, oh my God, the insane copycats are going to copycat this thing. And sure enough, they have. And that was my first thought almost immediately after the Fort Hood shooting and the Aurora movie theater shooting, that military bases and movie theaters are going to be the next targets for these copycats. And sure enough, they have been. And what do these places all have in common? They're all gun-free zones, right up until some bad guy with a gun shows up and turns it into a not gun-free zone. And of course, the law-abiding citizens there are disarmed by the fact of that sign that says gun-free zone. I'm afraid that the next target is going to be something even worse, hospitals or something. We don't know where these sickos are going to go next, except that it's going to be someplace that is supposed to be gun-free. There's this attitude that putting up a sign somehow protects you from the nastiness of the outside world, and it just doesn't. We've got to get over that mindset. The issue isn't one of laws. It's a mindset, and it's cultural, and it exists on the gun control side.
Meanwhile, over in New Jersey, Chris Christie, Republican presidential candidate, announced that the state's attorney general will file a new regulation that will allow victims of domestic violence a fast-track application process for gun permits. This would be a unique circumstance for New Jersey's already strict gun laws, as right now only retired law enforcement officers usually receive this fast-tracking process. And that's, of course, in reaction to an incident there. Should victims of domestic violence be given this quick access to gun? Will this open up a Pandora's box of passion-fueled revenge killings or not? Kevin, you want to start this one?
Yeah, I'm generally opposed to those sorts of things just because I think that everybody ought to be on the fast track to being able to legally own a gun if they're entitled to do so. The Constitution doesn't say you have a right to keep and bear arms if you belong to some sympathetic class of potential victims. It applies to everyone, even people who are unfortunate enough to live in New Jersey. So I think that what we should be looking at, instead of appealing to these kind of narrow, charismatic demographic groups, is broader reform. And of course, we're pretty bad at understanding violence in our society generally. I mean, we don't really have a lot of mass shootings. We have a lot of ordinary crime. Almost all of our homicides are committed by people who have prior criminal records that we're doing basically nothing to track or keep up with. We do a pretty bad job rather, of mental health management in a lot of these cases where there were clear signs and opportunities for intervention that we didn't take. But of course, the thing that government agencies always do is they want to regulate people who are inclined to follow the regulations. It's easy to enforce the law on law-abiding people. So you can regulate gun stores and people who are trying to go through the legal process of acquiring guns and that sort of thing. That's fairly easy to do. It doesn't take much work. Tracking down people who actually are career criminals, who are habitual lawbreakers, is a lot of work for police agencies, and it's a lot of work for parole and probation agencies, and they just don't want to do it. It's just a case of lazy government. Guns are inanimate and easy to try to police, and since they're always dealt by people who have federal licenses.
And my favorite example of this actually is in Seattle, Washington. Now they're talking about a gun violence tax, which of course isn't a tax on violence. It's actually just a tax on legal purchases of guns.
Right.
Steve, what do you think?
Oh boy, I'm going to agree with Kevin here that everybody should have that fast track. It shall not be infringed is pretty clear, and having to jump through hoops is certainly an infringement. What this story reminds me of out of New Jersey, though, is I remember seeing a study, this thing must be 15 or 20 years ago now, that in cases of long-term domestic abuse, where one of the partners eventually ends up dead, having a gun in the house changes who gets killed in the end, and it tends to be the abusee that survives rather than the abuser, because they finally get fed up with it. So we can all be against domestic violence, we can all be against gun violence, but I would rather in these long-term cases the government seems impossible to, or unable to cure, to fix, or whatever, that it's the long-term abusee who lives through the thing in the end.
Yeah, and lastly, sort of taking the New Jersey approach in a way, Washington, D.C. tried taking aim at future gun owners with a proposition put forth by D.C.'s police chief. The proposition failed, but what it would have required was a sort of old-fashioned thing where you'd have to show good reason to fear injury to your person or property or some other proper reason for carrying a pistol in order to receive a gun permit. Now, here's a good reason to carry a pistol, because I'm an American and it's my right. And frankly, another would be because I live in D.C., a crime-ridden hellhole with a lousy police chief. But besides that, what are your thoughts on things like this?
I'm generally not a fan of these sort of motive-based criteria in legal matters. I mean, there are good reasons for people to have guns. Some people just want them. Some people are legally entitled to own or to carry a gun. Some people aren't, and that's really the only thing that matters. You get into some really deep subjective territory where you're trying to explain to a police officer who is, not necessarily someone who is socially or intellectually equipped to make the decision just because his area of expertise is law enforcement, not your life, to make a reason for that sort of thing to be permitted. So I think it would make a lot more sense to go just in a more general direction of allowing people to exercise their natural and constitutional rights.
Well, you have the right to have a gun in the United States, and that's the good news. And gun enthusiasts like myself are heading to Texas in December for Bullets and Bourbon, and you're invited. So what's Bullets and Bourbon? It's a weekend-long retreat dedicated to the Second Amendment and to fine bourbon. It's a winning combination, though actually the bullets come in the afternoon and the bourbon comes in the evening. We thought that was probably a better order. I'll be joined by Dana Lash, Stephen Green, Ed Morrissey, Mark Ripito, who will actually be doing some strength training there, Roger Simon, my lovely and talented wife, Helen Smith, and Kevin Williamson. We'll all be speaking at the event and interacting one-on-one with the guests during a number of seminars, lunches, dinners, and planned and actually probably unplanned activities. This is all going to happen at the Rough Creek Ranch, which is about 90 minutes south of Dallas. The Rough Creek Lodge and Resort is stunning. It's located on 11,000 acres, and it offers fine dining, luxurious accommodations, pools, spas, and more. Stephen Green's going to be there. Nothing but the best for him. Some of the activities planned for the weekend include a variety of shooting sports like clay target shooting and tactical shooting at the ranch's gun range. You can even go on a hunting trip while you're there as birds, ducks, turkeys, and other animals roam prime hunting grounds. All the panelists, including me, will be participating in these activities, and in the evening, we'll drink bourbon, smoke cigars, enjoy some s'mores over the fire. There'll be no host cocktails in the evening, and big Texas-sized breakfasts in the morning. This is not your father's conservative event. Let me, Stephen, and Kevin, tell me, guys, what are you looking forward most at this?
What am I most looking forward to? Shooting some stuff. Shooting is fun. Putting steel on target is fun, just like any acquired skill. And there's a right to pleasure that should be enshrined in the Constitution. Maybe that's something I'm going to get into when I'm speaking a thing. But mostly, what I'm looking forward to is pouring some bourbon with some brand new friends at this thing. I really can't wait for that.
Kevin, what are you looking forward to?
Having spent most of the last decade in New York, I didn't have a lot of guns because it's very difficult to own a gun in New York City. So since having moved out of New York, I've been on a little bit of a shopping spree, unfortunately. So I've been doing a fair amount of shooting. I've just recently started learning how to do the clay target shooting, which I'd never really done before, and I found that to be a lot of fun. So I'm kind of I'm working on brushing up my shotgun skills.
Well, it ought to be a lot of fun. I'm frankly looking forward mostly to just hanging out with people. I love to shoot, but I can shoot here all I want. I live in a liberated zone in the United States, eastern Tennessee, where shooting is easy. But hanging out with a cool crowd like this is not so easy, so I'm looking forward to joining everybody there, and I think it's going to be a blast. And if some bourbon's involved, well, you can get that in East Tennessee too, but you can't drink it in the same company, so that should be great. If you want to learn more about Bullets and Bourbon, be sure to visit the website, bulletsandbourbon.com, for more information. And I want to thank Stephen Green and Kevin Williamson for joining me today. We look forward to seeing all of you in Texas in December, and I'm Glenn Reynolds. Thanks for watching.